Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. Hopefully you've all had a magnificent Monday and a great start to your week so far. We are going to start the video off in a different fashion this morning. We're going to be looking at the possibility of actually 2023 being a green year for Bitcoin. Initially, when I looked at this is looking at the percentage return for Bitcoin, and you can see it very much centers around the 4-year halvening cycle that Bitcoin has, the 4-year cycle, which we're going to be bringing in and talking about to start this video off. But actually, I can see the possibility of 2023 being a good year for Bitcoin overall. I think that we essentially are looking at a crash in Q2 or Q1 to Q2 that may get a kind of March 2020 style recovery. So we will do the technicals on Bitcoin. You guys know that short term we've said we're bullish from sort of 15,600. We think there's going to be a rally, and we think the bullish divergence that you had on the weekly for Bitcoin can absolutely not be ignored. And we looked at the prior time where you had this bullish div back in the run up to March 2020. And we're expecting a similar thing to take place. This ties in very nicely with Mike Wilson's comments. Mike Wilson essentially today came out advising clients to cut out of US equity tactical longs. We are now right in to our original upside targets, and we recommend taking profits before the bear market returns in earnest. So he called for about a 24% reduction in the stock market. Crypto won't escape this. And this is all coming on the back end of the dollar having a particularly nasty couple of weeks, but that trend potentially being subject to change. And we're going to look at the bullish div that we have on the dollar and so on and so forth. So we will do some technicals on Bitcoin and the crypto market in general. But I wanted to start this video off in a different kind of fashion. And initially when I looked at this, I somewhat scoffed and I said, okay, well, you know, it's unlikely that we're just going to follow this kind of 4-year cycle. We're following it pretty accurately. And actually, if we do get what I think plays out and we enter some sort of capitulation into the start to sort of Q2 next year, you know, something happens, this 24% drop that Mike Wilson's talking about from Morgan Stanley takes place, and the Fed have to cut rates as a result of this. And initially when the Fed cut rates, actually, guys, the pivot happens. Usually markets go down, and it's because the reasoning why the Fed have to cut rates has always been quite a grievous one. Like in 2019, for example, they nearly imploded the repo market. Obviously, 2008, the financial crisis, and prior to that, the dot-com boom. So the pivot narrative really needs to be looked at. And I did a sort of meeting with my patrons where we looked at it in yesterday's video. But I can actually potentially see 2023 overall coming out as a green year. Now, it may only be 20% green or 15% green from where it starts the year off, but you can see the current year that we're in, which is 2022, we started the year off at $47,902, and we're now at $17,300. So this is very recent. You know, this sort of centers around the halvening. The halvening is really what's dictated Bitcoin's price. However, the bottom of this bear market actually did correlate with them lowering interest rates back in 2019. Maybe just a coincidence. But essentially, Bitcoin, for anybody who's not familiar, has just followed a 4-year cycle where, you know, typically it starts off going into a harsh bear market, finds its bottom in the year prior, then starts you know, the bull market, and then in the 4th year it has this kind of blow off top. And we've done a version of that. And actually, you know, I still think we've got this kind of a leg to go. And I think that where Bitcoin potentially is, it's essentially looking at this. So we've looked at Bitcoin and we really flipped sort of short-term bullish as a result of this bullish div that we're getting. And we said the last time you had this was, of course, leading into March 2020. And we have called for upside. We've called for upside. We've given a number of reasons why we think upside is going to take place. So one of the reasons we think upside is going to take place, one of a few, is we've got the softer Fed narrative. We've got inflation coming down marginally. You know, we're moving from an inflationary environment into a deflationary environment where I actually think inflation is going to stay more persistent. So I think deflation is going to show up in sort of areas that we don't want it to, whereas sort of food and stuff like that is probably going to stay rather high and elevated in terms of inflation. So I think there's reason to suspect this rally to continue. I think whilst we've got a weaker dollar, that's very much likely going to be the case. I think the dollar, however, though, is subject to change. I think you're getting a bullish divergence here. So the price is putting in lower lows. You can run it all the way back. However, the actual... We don't need an hourly chart. Sorry, guys. Not sure why I'm on the hourly. So the price is putting in lower lows, whilst the RSI on the daily is putting in higher lows. So there's a bullish div here. Shows that this downtrend is actually, in my opinion, subject to change, and that you're at least going to get a return move, if not potentially the start of a reaffirming dollar. I do think the dollar will reaffirm, and that's why we're long dollars. But whilst the dollar stays weaker for a period, I think this rally is very much on. However, it is like playing Russian roulette. We know the eventual downside is coming. And I think essentially you are repeating what took place here and looking at this as a sort of scenario moving forwards. And this ties in with the kind of crash thesis that we have, potentially what the yield curve is predicting. You know, you don't have to run back to the FTX spill. You may just find yourself, you know, plenty of areas where this could top out. You could have topped out here and it could just be a marginally higher high. But this ties in with maybe actually 2023 being a green year, because doing a little bit of scenario forecasting, this is, we first originally drew this chart. This was me looking at the cryptocurrency markets total too, right? When it was at $350 billion. So we've been doing this for a while, guys. We've been in the crypto game for a long time. So we were looking at the crypto space here when we first started the channel, and we were saying, look, you're going to get rich, basically. And you know, since then it went on to basically 10x many altcoins, you know, some of them even 100x since we started originally calling or making crypto content. This is one of the first videos we did pointing out where you are and what we still had to come. But this is when we first started using this chart, and we kind of said, look, it really for Bitcoin, it's been supported by the macro backdrop, which is a very stimulatory central banks. And we're now in a period where that isn't the case. However, I believe that the systems that we have need stimulating. It has to consistently be inflationary, otherwise it implodes on itself. That's fiat systems generally. So I think they are going to have to go back to stimulating and inflating the money supply. And this kind of ties in with what we're saying about, you know, a rally leading into some sort of capitulation. I mean, the signs are there. You know, this is kind of what I think may take place. And then I think actually, if we do end up in this sort of a situation where they have to sort of come out and stimulate, maybe there's lockdowns again and they have to sort of come out and furlough and print and support people, you know, then maybe we enter, this is how potentially you end up in a green year for 2023. You know, this is just a scenario forecasting. Ultimately, from an investment point of view, we're out the market. The reasons that we're out the market, we've made very, very clear. It's because the macro situation is not a pretty one. On top of that, we see genuine risk for a capitulationary black swan event that the yield curve essentially is predicting. So this is potentially how you end up having a green year in 2023. You know, maybe you see something like this play out again. You know, maybe this is the scenario. Or potentially, you know, you do maybe a similar thing to this. Maybe it's not as aggressive, you know, and maybe it goes on for a little bit longer. So maybe we do something similar to this. And this is how you end up in a slightly green year for 2023, which I actually could see being a relative scenario. And then that would beg the question, is Bitcoin, despite the sort of macro conditions, even though they very nicely sort of coupled in with a 4-year cycle theory, is it just following it again? And then are we going to enter this new bull market in sort of 2024? I can't help but feel like it's going to be a lot more of a severe sort of March 2020 style capitulation that's going to be led by the traditional financial markets. And I think it's going to, as severe as it's going to be to the downside, it's also going to have to trigger that sort of severity to somebody coming in and supporting the markets. But this is kind of what I'm looking at for the next mid to long-term prediction. Ultimately, over the next, just like this video we made when the crypto market was only at $350 billion. I think where crypto is today is going to get to the tens of trillions eventually. But it's the path that we get there. And I think that ultimately crypto is still very tied to the macro. You know, we are expecting continuation in this market. And we have really been somewhat short-term bullish from down here when we call the short squeeze. And this is what we're looking at. You know, we're looking for these targets to get hit. And I wouldn't probably be comfortable shorting until you know, this has played out, but I don't think that this is going to go on for too long in terms of a rally to the upside. Just like Mike Wilson's calling for, you know, this bear market is very much intact, and it's very much a strong bear market that's backed by everything going on. I do genuinely think that the dollar is looking at reasserting. I think the dollar will take out its highs eventually. It's why we're net long dollars. And this could come on some sort of event that we're talking about. So some food for thought there, guys. You've got lots to think about, you know, moving forwards. How are you trying to play this market? And actually, could you see the possibility of it being a green month? Potentially. A green year, sorry, potentially, and just very much following this going into 2023. I can actually see it. And initially when I looked at this, I scoffed. And then one thing that I think you've got to be as a trader and investor is humble, in the sense that you can be wrong. You know, as traders, we constantly get trades wrong. It's managing those trades that save us. And as investors, you're never going to get everything right. And one thing that separates a good investor and a bad investor is admitting that they're wrong early, in my opinion, and changing whatever stances you have before that, you know, a lot of damage has been done. And this is what we're trying to achieve. So that's all I've got for you in this video, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this content. If you have a like, it's always appreciated. So as a comment. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you get notified whenever my videos are released. Click that bell. And I'll see you all in the next YouTube video. Have a magic Monday, guys. See you in the next one.